everyone, my name is Casey Slater and I'm a senior conference programmer here at South by Southwest. Welcome to another virtual session with special guests Savannah Peterson of Savvy Millennial and Darren Murph, head of remote at GitLab. In today's session, Savannah and Darren will discuss the future of the workplace and how society will benefit from widespread flexibility. Now, before we get into this conversation, just one thing. There will be a live Q&A in the later half of this session. If you have questions at any time for Savannah or Darren, please include them in the Slido platform on your screen. Once the question has been approved, it will be uploaded for all participants to vote on. The questions with the most votes will be given priority during the live Q&A. Now, with no further ado, here is Savannah Peterson and Darren Murph.
Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. And thank you so much for joining us for this episode of South by Southwest Virtual. My name is Savannah Peterson, and I am thrilled to be joining you today with the voice of all remote, Darren Murph. Now, before I introduce you to Darren, I want to give you just a tiny bit of background because he's uniquely poised to help us navigate this next, this whatever the normal looks like in the future. So Darren has been ahead of the hype curve for over a decade. The man is a Guinness World Record holding blogger. He used to work for Engadget. When I met him, he was working at Dolby. He's also worked at the Points Guy, so he knows everything there is to know about travel, about working from unique locations, and he's currently at GitLab. Now, for those of you that haven't read the news or the hype about GitLab, they have over 1,200 employees and they are all remote. And last I checked, their valuation is over $3 billion. So they're one of the first, if not the first, all remote unicorns. And this was a choice that the company had made before COVID, before all of this craziness. It was a discussion we were planning to have at South by Southwest in Austin 2 months ago. We actually did a panel 2 months ago as well at the onset of this to help prepare us. But today, we need to really talk about what's worked, what hasn't. We're already working from home, but what does it all mean? Is this what remote work is normally like? And what can we expect from the future? So when I mentioned that Darren's been ahead of the curve, he actually wrote a book about remote work 5 years ago, Living the Remote Dream. Can you believe that? 5 years ago, that's how ahead he was. And conveniently, he's been creating all of the content and a lot of the library for GitLab in terms of their resources. If you haven't checked those out, make a note right now to go check them out. After this presentation, GitLab has done some of the best documentation for remote work that I've ever seen. And without further ado, I would love to introduce you to the author of that content. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Darren Murph. Darren, thank you for joining us. Darren, are you in here? Okay, we've lost Darren temporarily, and I'm going to go ahead and keep chatting for a moment. Like I said, my name is Savannah Peterson. You're welcome to stalk me at savannahpeterson.com or Savvy Millennial. And to give you a little bit of a recap on how I think Darren is going to frame this day for us is initially everyone ran home and we didn't know how long it was going to be for. We didn't know what the future was going to look like. We didn't know if we were going to ever go back to work, if we were going to ever have childcare again. Everyone's having to play roles of teacher, of parent, of employee. It's been pretty chaotic for a lot of folks. And what's really nice is Darren has been one of the voices of all remote. He's been talking to a bunch of different publications. He's been educating the public. GitLab's basically keeping us together for free with all of their resources. So while we're waiting for Darren to rejoin us, if necessary, by all means, pop over to gitlab.com and make sure that you download their all remote resources. They are absolutely fantastic. Something that I would love to get rolling while we're waiting for Darren is this is a live Q&A. So feel free to start dropping questions into Slido. We'll make sure that we address everything that we can throughout the course of this panel. And I think that, it's going to be really interesting. Fun fact, I don't know if y'all know this, only 5% of work was done remote pre-COVID. Now, my company is much smaller than GitLab. We are 22 employees instead of 1,200, and we've been all remote the whole time. But I had no idea that there was such a small portion of the population working remote ahead of time. And when Darren and I started talking about this, stats were right between 3 and 5%, which is pretty crazy because I think at one point, at least speaking for the United States, we had 97% of the population in some sort of shelter in place. And we had and probably more people working from home forever. I just heard from Darren. It looks like he's going to be back in here in about 3 minutes. So please just roll with me down this stat train. Another fun fact, actually, and I'm happy to post all the sources for these. It's a little clunky with Zoom, but another fun fact that I recently learned about remote work is that per every part-time employee, even one half-time employee, companies save $11,000 a year. So that could essentially be $22,000 a year. This is not even including the real estate side of things, depending on the city that you're in. And I don't know, I'm curious to hear if you have any predictions. Let me know on Twitter. I'm at @SavIsSavvy. If you're listening right now, let me know your predictions for the future. What's going to happen? Do you think we're going to work from home forever? Do you think this is going to be a trend? Do you think that we're going to be doing some sort of hybrid model? I think that could get a little bit messy. Do you think that we're going to go straight back to the office as soon as possible? Are we going to be as comfortable next to our peers? Truly, get at me. Let me know your thoughts, and I look forward to discussing them with Darren. Something else that I'm really keen to hear your perspective on as we deliberate what the future of work looks like. And we have companies like Twitter and Facebook talking about work from home for extended periods of time, Microsoft through the end of the year at minimum. What do you think is going to happen to salaries? Because I've heard a lot of interesting discussion, I should say. I don't think that we know what the answer is yet, but I'm super keen to know what y'all think is going to happen to salaries, because on one hand, I think we should be paid a certain amount for a job if that's what we value it to, what that job is worth. And then on the flip side, when you've got cost of living in major cities that's very different, and other rural and less urban areas, I can totally understand the argument for both. And I think that's actually going to be one of the hotter topics. I love how GitLab does it. They have a very transparent calculator that factors in your role and the city, the cost of living in the city that you're in, and fairly sets your salary, which I think is a really great way of doing it. I hope that we see more of this stuff in the future. But honestly, I mean, my team, as far as I'm concerned, the rates that I have for them, just speaking for myself, I would pay my team exactly what I pay them now, no matter where they live. I value their work, and I mean, the rate's comfortable for the cities that they live in now in New York and London. But if they moved, I personally, as a founder, couldn't see myself paying them less just because their cost of living went down. Just because you become a more savvy business person, I don't know that you should have to suffer that way. So I'm curious what your thoughts are. If you're a founder and you're listening right now, or if you're a business owner, what are you thinking about? If your team goes all remote, how are you going to handle that? We didn't have real estate. We've never had a storefront, so it's a little bit different for us. But I think it's going to be a really unique challenge for folks as we move forward. A few other fun stats for you. So I feel like Zoom has now become a verb. It's kind of an action, an actionable thing that we do now. It's an activity. And did you know that between February and March, there was a 1,330% increase in Zoom downloads? That's insane. I don't think I've ever seen numbers like that. Even more compelling, this one's crazy. I hadn't read this until yesterday. On March 31st, so shortly after we would have had our time together in Austin, we had Microsoft Teams, which had 200 million downloads in 2 weeks or something. Quite more users on Microsoft Teams than all of Slack altogether in 2 weeks, which was pretty crazy when all of this started. But this stat is absolutely nuts to me. So on March 31st, Microsoft Teams had 2.7 billion meeting minutes. Okay, so we got 60 minutes in an hour, 24 hours in a day, and you're telling me that we had 2.7 billion meeting minutes in one day. Now, I think that's pretty wild, and I can't even fathom 2.7 billion minutes. But I think it's really interesting, and the reason I bring this up, and I'm excited to talk to Darren about it, is I think that when this all started, I'm wondering if we all shifted into having all of a sudden a whole bunch of meetings to make sure that we were okay, and almost excessively meatifying ourselves Or was it that there was some sort of, have we relaxed now? Have we optimized this meeting flow? I know we talk a lot about Zoom fatigue. We talk a lot about getting headaches. There's a lot to it. And I think that we're really at a unique juncture where we're going to settle into new patterns and really figure out what works, because what worked in the office is not necessarily going to work from home. And the amount of time that we have to be on camera, whether it's ad-libbing during a panel with some technical difficulties, or whether it's on a Zoom call with your entire team, there is something to be said for this type of communication as different from, say, the water cooler or from a formal meeting. So there's a really great article actually on the Next Web if you're looking for a resource that explores this, that just came out last night. It's absolutely fantastic. The title is click on this if you're like sick of internet meetings or your Zoom meetings aren't productive. Or anyway, I can share that. I'll tweet this out after the show, but it's a really great psychological kind of deep dive, and then an awesome toolkit for how to make your meetings really, really, really efficient, because I think we all know that meetings in general are one of the least efficient parts of our day, and the more efficient that we can make them, the better. So maybe I'm curious to see if those minute stats go up on Zoom or on Microsoft Teams, for example, as we continue to go through this, or if we sort of level out and plateau. And I think that hopefully we have Darren here. It's been a few minutes. Yeah, so we've got a lot of interesting stats. I actually read something, and I wanted to ask Darren about this, but we're starting to hear that we might see 50% of teams roll remote. Now, I want to hear some stat predictions. Actually, let's see if y'all are chiming in on Twitter. I want to see what you're saying right now, because I'm real curious to see what's going on. Oh, hi, hello. I'm loving y'all here in the comments. Doesn't look like anyone has any predictions though. Well, another thing that I know Darren would absolutely be talking about is tools. And I'll just go ahead and share some of the advice that I know that he would share if he was sitting in here right now with us. And that is that Slack is a no productivity zone. I'm not sure if you're all familiar with asynchronous communication, but I think that's become really important right now during this pandemic. This belief that we have to get an instant response from everyone on our team when we drop a message in Slack or we send an email, it's just absolutely ridiculous. It's first of all, it's not healthy. It's not fair. We're living in a very unique circumstance right now where most people don't have childcare. They don't have, maybe they didn't have a work setup, an office setup within their space. Most people can't. People got roommates. People got a lot of things going on. And one of the things that I've really learned from Darren and from the GitLab team and from Sid, the CEO of GitLab, is every response in Slack, or try and answer every question with a link that should go to some sort of documentation or some tool. And when you adopt asynchronous communication, definitely recommend you read a little bit more about this. There's a lot of cool articles. Actually, that Next Web article that I was mentioning earlier talks a lot about this too. But when you do this, you create, it's asynchronous, but to me, I almost see it as autonomous. You create a sense of autonomy and empower a sense of independence in your employees when you create an environment in which they're not constantly attached to their cell phone and permanently trying to respond to, whatever it is that they think they need to be nuanced in, or whatever they need to be educated in. And I think we've created this with it's called the Jolt economy, the Jolt media side of things, and where anytime you get a push notification, you're expected to respond. Anytime somebody hits you up in Slack, you're expected to respond. And I think if we could just balance all of that. Hey, Darren, it's great to see you. I see you're coming back in on the audio side. Fantastic. We've got you in maybe the wrong mode right now. Looks like you're in.
Do I need to be upright, huh?
Yeah, we're going to need to rotate you, but it's so nice to see you. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, after that 15-minute ad lib with some stats to get y'all warmed up, please give the fabulous and famous and notorious and brilliant mind of all remote work, Darren Murph, a very warm welcome. Darren, thank you for making it happen. I know it's been a moment today.
This is it's the joys of remote work. It's never predictable, but it's always fun. So apologies while I try to get this phone set up here. I had to move to phone. The laptop decided it wasn't going to work today, so here we are.
Okay. It happens sometimes. Just so you know where we're at in the conversation with myself, I've been talking to them about how, it was about 3 to 5%. We've seen a couple different studies come out in terms of how much
Yep.
remote work was done beforehand. And I let them know that happened. We talked about 2.7 billion Teams meeting minutes by Microsoft on March 31st. Although we're seeing some of those numbers come down a little bit as people have less meetings. So we've sort of done a little bit of that ideation, what's happened. But from you, Darren, where are we now? What's going on? What are the trends you're seeing? You're right on the pulse. Break it down for us.
Yeah. So we are in the midst of what I'm calling the Great Remote Migration. So overnight, the world's global embrace of remote has been accelerated by 10 years. And folks like you and I that have worked remotely for essentially our entire career kind of knew this was coming. The remote future was always something that was ahead. The technology was there. People were more culturally adapted to communicating digitally. But there was still a lot of norms and traditions connected to seeing people in the office.
Right.
And there were a lot of managers that said, this job can't be done remotely, or this team needs to be in the office. And there was always a special reason or a special excuse why a certain person or a certain team couldn't do what they do remotely. And overnight, one of the side effects of COVID-19 is that it turns out the technology is there and people actually can do what they need to do remotely, and business continuity can be had remotely. So what we're seeing is everyone going remote and figuring out at the same time. Now, I want to couch that by saying what we're experiencing is not intentionally designed remote work. This is very much crisis-induced work from home. It's very easy to conflate the two. So if you ask someone right now, hey, how are you liking work from home? Probably not the best time to ask that, because you're probably going to get some emotions mixed in that have to do with just being in a state of global isolation. So I see companies
in the middle of a pandemic creates slight new design constraint to the work from home setup. So in fairness, this is weird even for me. I saw my productivity fall pretty hard in the beginning of this. I think I'm starting to get back up to normal, but I don't know about you. Did you take a little bit of a hit in the beginning?
For sure. And it's still going on. And I just want to say, if that's you, if you cannot figure out why you're exhausted, you're not alone. There's a lot of other external factors that are going on that even if you were back in the office or wherever your normal workplace was, there's a lot of other factors going on. So that's happening. Oddly enough, at GitLab, we've seen overall productivity tick up, and we're actually, the only thing we can figure is that people are home all the time now. So if you had a planned vacation, it's kind of like, where are you going to go? And it's much more difficult to get out and go do the things that you may do on a weekly basis. And when the laptop is always there, it's really easy to just jump back into work. And honestly, work can be a distraction from everything else that's going on. So at GitLab, we actually, May 1st, we designated as a Family and Friends Day. It was a Friday. And we said, hey, we're shutting the whole virtual office down. Everybody just go have a long weekend, do something with your family. And we actually had a Slack thread where people would share photos from around the world of things they were doing with their day instead of working. And that went a long way, taking the intentional approach to making sure people were considering health and well-being and mental health. And just being open about it instead of kind of looking the other way. That's really important for leadership. If you're a suddenly remote leader, it's really easy to get fixated on, all right, what do I need to do to just make sure there's business continuity? But remember, you're dealing with real people and they have real lives, and essentially their entire existence, their entire identity has been thrown into chaos. And it is on leadership to make sure they're okay and make sure they're given some guidance and given the space they need to acclimate to what's happening right now.
Yeah, so let's dive in there a little bit, because you're a leader yourself. You're also talking to a lot of leaders. What sort of leadership mindset is necessary to adapt to this challenge?
That's the toughest thing. For leaders who have led in a co-located space using the typical command and control, if I can see you, I can judge you. A lot of subjectivity has leaked into praise and promotion over the years, whether we want to admit that or not. And this is kind of a moment of reckoning for leaders who have use that path to get them to where they are in their career. And frankly, the best remote leaders don't use micromanagement and command and control. They use servant leadership. And going from one extreme to the other in an instant with all of this going on can be really jarring and disorienting, and it kind of feels counterintuitive. But what I like to say is the further your team is physically from you, the more you need to let go. The more you need to allow them the space to be autonomous and do what they need to do. So managers in this time should really be a sounding board. You should be open to feedback. You should ask for feedback. Ask your team what they need. You got to remember, everyone's office looks different now. The equipment that they have is different than what they had in the office. Maybe they need an ergonomic setup. Maybe they need noise canceling headphones. Maybe they need a standing desk, things that you would have never considered needing in the office. Now they need to continue to be productive and to continue to be healthy. And if leadership doesn't take the proactive step in asking for these things and enabling these things, they won't happen. And a lot of people will just try to do the best they can if they're a great employee, but that's not a great long-term solution. So ask for feedback. You never know what's happening. And frankly, your employees are in the best place to kind of map out the priority list of what communication gaps do we need to fill? What are we not thinking of that we need to be thinking of in this remote setting? They're dealing with it. They're on the receiving end of this every day. So allow them the space to feed that back.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I think that the feedback loop almost flattens in a situation like this because we're all in we're in it together. I mean, we're alone together, we're stronger together, we're isolated together. There really is a lot to this. And I think that something that we've talked a lot about is employee feedback and really being open to that and being candid. I think leadership has an opportunity to be really honest right now and say, hey, like even you just did, or like I just did, I probably had the least productive 4 weeks of maybe my career, quite honestly, at the beginning of this, like March 21st to April 15th, pretty low ROI, just on me as a human, pretty garbage. And I think that being transparent about that, and as we build through and what's made us feel better, if it's working out or if it's Zoom dance class or if it's whatever, I think the humility and candid nature in leadership is something that I am really responding to as well right now, whether that be as a consumer or as a leader, is just be real with me and you've got my attention. The second you try and tell me this like soft rock plays and you try and tell me that it's all going to come together, like no, I'm not ready for that commercial yet. That's not there yet. It's not like green pastures and all that crap. We're just not quite there. So yeah, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's interesting because the topic here is on the future of what this means. And I think what you're seeing is managers have to realize that they're now asking things of employees who are in their homes. And I'm just going to be honest, when you ask someone to do something in an office and then you ask someone to do something and they're in their home, it just hits different. So you have to be aware of the fact that you're asking someone to do something and they're in their own home. And even if subconsciously it's like, it just feels a little weird to be told to do something when you're in your own home. So the approach has to be completely different and you have to be cognizant of things like that. But to your point, what we're uncovering here is that this great remote migration is democratizing this in a massive way. And I think going forward, all of these conversations, which were potentially taboo or exclusively for senior level leaders that had the portfolio to back up, hey, I can do this from anywhere, you can trust me. Now that's going to be in the screener call of interviews. Every employee is now democratized to say, hey, what's your stance on workplace flexibility? Because post COVID-19, every company will have to have an answer to that, and it will not be out of line whatsoever to ask for that. So I'm looking forward to that future because so many people have wanted to ask that, but they essentially acquiesce and don't bring it up. And then they sacrifice a lot of their life. They sacrifice so much time with family in the name of a commute for what? If their job can be done from anywhere, it's
rules. I mean, it's always bothered
old-fashioned tradition. That's right.
And to me, it's a little bit about employee trust. I mean, I know Sid doesn't agree that it's a trust thing when we talk about it because you have process and you have KPIs and you're measured against your activity. To me, I firmly believe there is a little bit of trust. And I think when people won't allow this to happen, it's because they don't trust their employees. And my question is, who did you hire? Like if your employee self-destructs, I mean, that could be because you didn't support them or whatever. But on the flip side, like I trust my employees at 2 a.m. with a baby on their arm and their left hand on their keyboard, just as much as I trust them at 10 a.m. in the morning with a coffee. It's not about any of that. And I think for you and I, this has been really fun because we've intersected around the world in a lot of different ways. And I think people are finally going to have that opportunity to truly have their own self-empowerment to optimize their work environment. And leaders can do the same. You don't have to be the first one in the office and the last one out. And there's nothing to be proven by that sort of like hustle culture. So since we're talking about this, Darren, what decisions have you seen? I think you guys have handled this very well, and we'll talk specifically about GitLab, I think, in a little bit. But in terms of, since you're kind of watching the whole market, what are some of the decisions that you've seen work extremely well in the last 2 months? And what would you really not advise folks to do right now?
Yeah. So what has worked well is executives getting out of the office and planning to stay out of the office. So even before COVID-19, when clients would come to us and they would say, how do we do remote right? My first piece of advice is get your entire executive team out of the office for a full quarter, not just a week or two where you can kind of band-aid it together, a full quarter, where it forces you to build some remote fluency. It forces you to build remote muscle. It forces you to look at what are our communication guidelines. Yes, remote muscle. Exactly.
Remote muscles. I know.
It forces you, but it forces you to do things different. And it forces you to document what is working, what isn't working. And that becomes your priority list of what infrastructure to build to make sure that the business can operate and people can interact regardless of where they're sitting. And that is ever more true right now, because this is an amazing time where you have this gift of everyone being remote at once. It's almost like you couldn't invent this beta test. This is an amazing business beta test. Don't waste it. Yeah. And I've spoken with some leaders who say, I can't wait for the office to open back up. I'm going to be the first one to run back in there. That's a terrible approach if you want to support remote properly. There's a big difference between allowing remote and supporting remote, and people follow as they're led. And if they see their executive team flock right back to the office, the message it sends is, if I care about my career, I'm going to go back to the office, because that's where the epicenter of power is. And of course, all of our communication dynamics and workflow dynamics are going to center around the group of people physically sitting in the office. And the only way to force that not to be a part of your culture is to stay out. The thing about what not to do, don't waste this time. If you have defined your company culture by the hip coffee that you have, the office decor, what neighborhood you're in, time to change that. You need to write down what your culture. I love coffee too, but like let everybody select their own coffee, or just, I don't know, mail everyone the same coffee. You can get creative with that. But if you've let your office culture be defined by vanity metrics, essentially, it's time to write down what your culture is. And so at GitLab, we're an all remote organization. Our cultures are our values. If you Google GitLab values, you'll see our 6 core values, but then thousands of words underneath of them that explain how do you live out a value in a remote setting. It's time to write that down. And here's the big thing I want people to remember. You're only going to remember one thing from this, and you're a leader. Remember that your offices and your headquarters are simply a building that you go to work remotely. What I mean by that is the office and a spare bedroom and a WeWork are all the same place. You have to first design your company and your company culture to work well remotely, so it works wherever people are. And then if they choose to go into the office, cool. If they choose to go into a WeWork, cool. If they choose to work from a spare bedroom, cool. But it doesn't disrupt the fabric of what makes your company your company. And that great decoupling of identity from these 4 walls that you're used to going into to something very different is the great challenge of our day. And I think it will be the litmus test of the companies that really lean into this and do it well versus those that just kind of hope we can go back to the office and pretend this never happened.
Yeah, I think you just struck on something really interesting there. I mean, it's shifting a sense of identity from a physical place to a purpose. And I think as we see, I mean, we've been seeing, everyone looks at us millennials for this a lot with our purpose-driven careers and running a company named Savvy Millennial. I kind of take the piss on this a lot, but I think there's something to that though, is it won't just, you can't have wanted to go to one hacker way to go work at Facebook, You're not going to have that definition right now. Even for me as a speaker and a professional who does this, I miss the stage. There's no stage for me right now. There's this stage, but it's weird and it's different. And I totally understand. And I think as we come around to this, so this kind of brings me to my next question, which I think is good. As we're going through this migration, let's say it's January 2021, since we really have no idea what's going to happen.
All right. I like that. That. The crystal ball is out.
Yeah. Crystal ball's out. And, get your vibes going. Where are we at January 2021? Are we mostly remote? Are most companies hybrid? Has everybody sprinted back to the office as fast as they could because they're sick of Zoom? What's going on?
I think you're going to get a combination of those. What you're going to get is just more honesty. So you're going to find out some people really love going to the office because that's where they love to work. You're going to find out some people that you thought loved the office actually wanted to be a nomad and live somewhere different every week. You're going to find out some leaders kind of fall apart when they don't have the rigidity of the office. You're going to have some people that now see this as an empowering move to go all remote. I know of a couple of companies already where they had one big office in a major city, and they've decided we're not going to renew the lease. We are using this as a forcing function to get it right. I mean, look, people are building remote infrastructure right now. They're retooling their communication processes. They're documenting things in ways that rigorously that they've never done before. And the way I liken it is, who would pave a road only to drive on it for 3 months? If you're going to put in the effort to pave a road, significant effort, you might as well drive on it as long as it's there and then continue to retool it and make your company better along the way. I think early 2021 will be the great litmus test of who took advantage of this time and used it well and who didn't. And I think here's where you can go look. Go look at Glassdoor, because here's what I think is going to happen. There's going to be a lot of companies in the next 3 months that say, we support remote. We support remote. And then there's going to be different actual experiences of support remote. There's going to be some companies where employees will say, hey, my company told me they supported remote. I uprooted my family. We moved back home because we wanted better air quality, better schools for our kids, what have you. But the experience was very substandard. It was very much a 2-tier system where people in the office got this experience, the people outside of the office got this experience, and there wasn't a lot of effort put on trying to level that. You're going to have some companies that are going to go above and beyond, that are going to try to make the experience of the company work well no matter where people are. And then if people choose to go to the office, it's just another place they go to work. That, I think, is going to be the defining line, because right now everyone just kind of has a pass on it. It's like, look, we're all working from home. The situation is weird. As long as we're together, we're making do, this is a success. But fast forward 6 or 8 months from now, people are going to look closely at what is the remote experience and who's doing it well. And hybrid, where some people go into the office and some people don't, is the hardest thing to get right. All remote is relatively easy because everyone's on a level playing field by default. It's impossible to miss out on something that happens in a hallway because there are no hallways.
Right.
And that's why I recommend, if possible, if you only have one office, 2 offices, unwind them now. Get out of them now. Your life will be way easier. You don't have the administrative burden of looking after an office culture versus a remote culture. But hybrid is obviously going to be the most popular because too many companies have offices that they can't quickly get out of. So you're going to need to put a lot of intentional effort on getting that right. And I'll make one final projection. I think there will be a lot more heads of remote in the years ahead because people are realizing getting remote right, there's a lot of nuance in remote. You can't just tack that onto somebody else's job description. It requires daily intentionality to things that you never thought would require intentionality.
Yes. And for those of you listening, if you're curious exactly what Darren's job looks like, or if you're looking to hire a head of remote, he has actually authored an excellent resource on GitLab specifically about his job. So go Google that, check it out. Again, can't tell you I can't tell you enough throughout the course of this how valuable GitLab's resources are. So go check them out. They're all free. There's no weird spammy MLM catch here. You can actually just download the goods and learn. I have personally learned an incredible amount from that resource stack. And I agree with you. I think that I think that remote leader is kind of like community leadership has happened with community management. We're starting to see these two kind of crop out, where it's like, it's not just one siloed function, but how can you both educate and empower and create the gel that helps sort of foster culture. And I think both of those roles actually really play well with that. So speaking of, holy moly, free holy, thank you to everyone. If you are thinking about submitting questions, we have over 30 questions in the queue right now, which is absolutely amazing. Don't think that this means you can't ask a question. We're going to ask most of the ones here that are most upvoted. So go in and get your votes in right now. Also, though, I will probably throw in some wild cards because I have a tendency to shoot from the hip. So although you probably already saw that with our intro, I like this question from Becca. Becca, thank you so much for submitting this. This is something that I wanted to ask you too, Darren. So going off of the whole culture front, how, and I know there's documentation, I know it's about taking it seriously, but how is culture impacted by this? And how do we replace that sense of belonging that we did have by the water cooler or at the pizza party?
Yeah, it requires intentionality. If you look at GitLab's handbook, we have an entire page on informal communication, and our people group is actually responsible for working with leadership and departments to create ways to create the atmosphere for people to communicate. So I'll give you an example. We recently had a marketing talent show. So we had 130 people across 6 continents. Yeah. So we just had people group. We threw a calendar invite on everyone's calendar 2 weeks out. It had a Google Doc agenda attached to it. Sign up here, bring your talent. We had about 29 people sign up for the talent. Everybody else, like me, was just a spectator.
Jared, otherwise we're going to need a talent review right now.
No. I'm like, first time by, we're going to spectate. But yeah, we had just fascinating stuff. We had someone do sign language with their dog, and then their dog reacts. We had someone like in their kitchen, very Gordon Ramsay-esque, flames flying everywhere, just a spectacular show. And we had a panel of judges and actual prizes. So there's some real deal competition happening. Yeah. And this goes to the scarcity versus abundance mindset. Don't be upset that you don't have the office. Think of what you do have at your disposal now that you don't have the office. You can't have 130 people do a talent show with elements like that in an office. It's never going to happen. So we do things like that. We're doing scavenger hunts. We're doing trivia, biweekly trivia. I'm telling you, the competition gets intense in the trivia, which is awesome. And none of this is difficult to set up. All it requires is a calendar invite and a Google Doc agenda attached to it, but it takes intentionality. The one other thing that I think GitLab does that's very unique that I love is that we expire our Slack messages after 90 days. And immediately people are like, well, what do you use Slack for? Well, we don't want to use it for work. We use it as a forcing function so that work begins and ends in a GitLab issue. We want people to use our asynchronous collaboration tool to get work done. That frees Slack up to be an amazing tool for informal communication. So we have Slack, public channels in Slack around hiking, mental health, parenting, just general topics where people can just go and converse as humans, not about work. The parenting one has been blowing up of late. We have parents all over the world that are like, my kids are at home. I have to be a homeschool teacher as well. Does anybody have any tips? So that's been really fun. That has actually spun up something called Juicebox chats, where if we have open hours in our calendar, parents will just turn their Zoom cams on and kids from 6 continents will get to sing together, play together. So although they're isolated, they're being brought together in a way that wouldn't be possible without this, which I love to see that innovation. So you just have to be intentional. Like, nothing I'm saying is very groundbreaking. Anyone can do this with a webcam and a calendar invite. You just need a group in the company, and this goes back to the mention on Head of Remote, thinking about these things and thinking about bringing it together. I want to say one more piece on this, and it's a little bit philosophical, so bear with me. I think for a really long time, we have allowed our personal identities to become very tightly entwined with our work identities. And I think for a lot of people, this is a really interesting introspective moment where they're starting to question, who am I when I don't walk into these 4 walls each day? Have I allowed my social quota to be completely filled by work relationships, almost to an unhealthy degree, where I have maybe ignored community and neighbors and even family in favor of that? And we've kind of, especially in America, we've allowed that to kind of run unchecked. The hustle culture that you mentioned.
That's a super American thing. Yeah.
Now is the time to ask yourself, is that balance out of whack for you? Should you be getting some of that social quota from something outside of work? And of course, you don't have to go from 100 back to 0, but like maybe the ratio looks a little different coming out of COVID. Maybe there's some really close friends, neighbors, and community that you haven't called in a really long time, and maybe you should. Now's the time to do that. You can't go to the four walls. Like, now's an awesome time to just get out a moleskin, start writing down people's names that come to mind, and re-engage in relationships that matter. Relationships are the bedrock of life. So if you've let any kind of go to the wayside, now's an amazing time to reevaluate that.
I'm really glad that you said that, Darren, because I think, there's a lot of hustle porn out there right now. There's a lot of suggestions to learn every activity. But for me, I've actually dedicated minimum, and this is maybe generous for some, but for me, it was a very palpable choice, at least 20 hours a week to connecting with the people that I love to make sure that they're doing all right. And it's been a commitment. I'm lucky. I don't have children or a lot of dependents on me. So I have the luxury of that time every week, but it's made a real difference. And it's amazing how much better it makes me feel sometimes being available and being able to connect with someone. One question to ask yourself. So if you're wondering how to gauge whether or not you've figured this out or you have balance, the question that always works for me, and this is a really jarring moment for me in my career a few years ago, someone I respect a lot professionally asked me, we were talking about work, and they said, okay, well, that's enough about work. What are your hobbies?
Radio silence.
I didn't have an answer.
Yeah.
I was embarrassed. I was deeply mortified. And subsequently now I can say that my hobbies are space. I have a lot of other things that I love doing that I'm really passionate about, and content I like making. We're launching a new podcast. I'll pitch you all later. And now I feel that I can answer that question. And I don't want to say this because it's not like you need to learn a new language during a freaking global pandemic. I'm not suggesting that. But what is, in fact, people who do those are just meanies. Don't listen to those people. Like, legitimately just meanies. But what I have found that's been really nice for me is, even if I take 20 minutes during a phone call with a friend or something to paint with some watercolors or do a little doodle, art really calms me down. I'm a terrible artist. You're never going to see my art anywhere cool, but it's a hobby. You don't have to be good at hobbies. In fact, it's like great if you're really bad. Like, I'm terrible at painting, but I don't care because I like it, and it's
exactly.
calming, and I don't have to do anything. And I think that we've forgotten, I speak for myself as a Silicon Valley tech nerd, we had forgotten what it was like to have this time. And I know you're in the same camp. You and I travel a lot, we're road warriors. I have never had this much time inside my home. And it is wild. But what's also been nice about it is, after we shook off that, and trust me, I still get frustrated. If y'all frustrated, we're all frustrated. It happens. But I think once I shook that off, I feel like I've been able to really, I don't know, like I'm embracing this other creative spirit. I'm letting myself be a little messier. And I suspect, is there anything, actually curious for you, Darren, because you're kind of a pro like this. Is there anything you've taken up that you hadn't done really pre-COVID? Any fun joy hobby that you have?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I first want to intro this by saying people are quick to say, hey, I want to get back to normal. Maybe we want to get back to freedoms that we had, but don't be so quick to say we just want to get back to the way it was. Like, this is your moment to consider, was I out of balance in any way? Maybe you want to use this moment to fundamentally do something different going forward. This is kind of your second chance at a New Year's resolution, kind of like mid 2020 New Year's resolution, COVID
it's
resolution,
kind of like
whatever you want.
Life, mid-career, like
it is
the whole thing. Mm-hmm.
It is. No, you can see these instruments right here. For far too long, they had just hung on the wall like art, and now I'm actually getting them down and using them and creating and writing songs, and that has been super therapeutic and really awesome. It's like, I have the instruments here. Why are they collecting dust? It can be something as simple as that, or just recommitting to doing something that used to bring you a lot of joy. Burnout happens slowly and then all at once. Mm-hmm. And if you don't pause to notice it, when you just let it happen gradually, it doesn't actually feel like anything negative is happening. So you may be hesitant to change anything about your life. But yeah, for me, it's been music. And for you, it can be anything. But take this moment to ask yourself, what should that thing be that I re-inject into my life?
Yeah. What's going to make you smile that's away from your laptop? Or maybe it's in front of your laptop, honestly. If
that's
you like
right.
Certain videos or whatever. But so is music going to be your talent show activity for the next one?
Whew, I was tempted to say yes, but actually someone on that talent show got their entire family together, like with an instrument with all their family, and
Oh no,
just
one of those
went.
families.
Yeah, well, they were amazing. It was
Yeah.
it was incredible, like not
Yeah.
cheesy in the least. And so I'm thinking, I got to bring some strong music game, because there are some incredible musical talents at GitLab. So
I believe that. I could definitely see that. Doesn't surprise me at all. All right. Well, thank you for that. And I'm happy to hear that music is bringing you joy. It's beautiful. Music helps us all. So speaking just real logistically and popping back in for some more of these questions, again, thank you to everyone who's listening. We love it. Say hi. I'm Savvy at Darren Murph on Twitter if you want to continue this conversation, because there's absolutely no way we can get to 29 questions in the next few moments, but we will get to as many of them as we can. Post check. What is the responsibility of a company? And GitLab's actually a great example for this. What's your responsibility as a company in terms of providing resources, computer, internet costs, cell phone? Talk to me about the logistics.
yeah, for a remote company, you got to be intentional about this. You got to pay for people's internet. You don't want them skimping on internet. Please reimburse their internet so they don't get the cheapest package and then none of their video calls work. Like, please give them that. They had a massively great fiber optic connection at the office. Give them that. At GitLab, we allow people to spend money on their office if they need an ergonomic workspace. If you have a disability and you need an office that works out a certain way, you have to be cognizant of that. So for companies that have been really tight on the purse strings when it comes to expenses on equipment, now's the time to release those a little bit. You've got people working in one-bedroom apartments with significant others and kids. Please let them get noise-canceling headphones. It's going to pour back into the productivity of your office. So you need to retool and rethink that to some degree. And remember, an office space wasn't free. Cubicles can cost anywhere between $10,000 and $20,000 a year to keep someone in there. So I'm pretty sure your employees aren't going to cost you that much remotely. But of course, if you're paying for both, it makes it tough. But now's the moment to start unwinding that office. But yeah, don't make sure people have what they need to get work done. You got to understand their office today is definitely not what they had, and it ties back to productivity. So it's smart from a business perspective too.
It is. And I saw that I've seen a few numbers, a few figures thrown around. I saw $1,000 as kind of a finger in the wind. Does that pulse check for you? If how does that line up? I think that feels
Yeah,
to me.
it does feel about right.
Yeah.
You have to assume people have some things, like if they had a laptop in the office, they can bring that home. But they might not necessarily have an external monitor, so you might need to look into that. Yeah, 1,000 US is probably a good place to start. You may have some extraneous circumstances. If they're a designer, they might need a certain monitor that can cost more than $1,000, for example. But there'll be a lot of chaos, kind of shuffling all of that out. But start somewhere. I wanted to say this earlier, but remote is very much a process. It's a journey of iteration. It is not something that you go from zero to mastery overnight. So please don't hold yourself to that standard. Just commit to iterating. Just put something out there as a new expense policy and then iterate on it. Like, it might not be perfect and it's totally okay. Part of being remote is being okay with things not being perfect the first time. And at GitLab, we encourage people to ship things in draft, get them out early so you get feedback early and you can course correct early. We try to do everything as a two-way door. Like, if you walk through the door and you're like, that's a little scary, I'm going to turn around and walk back through that door. So two-way doors over one-way doors, and that includes expense policies.
Yes, I think that's great. And as you know, I'm a big fan of thinking like a designer. So it's all about prototyping and iterating, and it's okay to just iterate right out of that little path that you decided to try in any given time. So I think, I think it's important. And I think, something that I just want to state here, because I know you and I really believe in it, is ask your team how they want to be thanked. Mm-hmm. People don't do this enough, and it breaks my heart. Like, when was the last time somebody asked you how you want to be thanked? I personally have not been asked this in a few years. And I can actually remember the last time somebody thanked me and I wanted an All Blacks jersey from New Zealand, and I got it, and it was really nice.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, it was a decent call, for the record. But I always ask my employees how they want to be thanked and what I can do for them. And sometimes that is a treat. Maybe it's going above and beyond what the budget was for their workspace. And like, to your point with noise canceling headphones, one of my top performers really wanted an expensive pair of headphones, and guess what? He got a little COVID care package, and they were in there. But it's, you ask people what they need. For me, I want a bottle of nice bourbon. Like, it's pretty straightforward, but it's, it all just depends on where you're at. And it's amazing what you can do for morale and how those little moments, just by being receptive to someone's, whether it's their work setup, logistically speaking, or how they like to be given a high five when you can't go over and give them a shout out or drop something on their desk. Mail is still working in the United States. Leverage the mail, send a treat, say thank you to your people, get them something silly. Something that we've been doing is I've been sending random desk tchotchke to my team so that we all have the same things on our desk. So it's something very simple, but it creates a tiny little bit of culture, tiny little sense of whatever, but anything that you need to do.
I love it. Hey, Savannah, we've got like 8 minutes left, maybe. Let's see if we can do lightning round. I'm going to try to shorten up my answers and try to punch through as many of these
All right,
as
ready?
possible.
So we do.
I appreciate the questions.
Darren, let me pulse check with you. So we've been given a little permission from South by to go a few minutes over since we lost you in the beginning. Do you have an extra 10 on the back end here?
Maybe if somebody on the back end is receptive. I'm now like pushing dominoes backwards, but it's the fault of my internet. That's the remote life.
All right,
Yeah.
so we're gonna do, so all right, Darren, let's try and I'll keep an eye on my watch. Let's try and answer questions in like 20 to 45 seconds, okay?
Let's do it. Hold me to it. I want to hear the Oscars music, like
I'm literally just gonna sit here. Yeah. All right. How do you convince old school management to change their mindsets when it comes to remote work when facts state that remote work saves the company money? AKA, how do you get a boss to move that's sluggish?
Ask the boss to write down what they expect of you. If your metrics have not been written down, so you don't know what results look like, ask them to write it down. Put the burden back on them to articulate what you need to do to be a success, because that will decouple geography and results. That's your entire goal. Convince them to decouple geography and results. If this is a foreign concept to them and you try every which way and it's never going to work, polish your resume. Some people just aren't going to want to work this way, and you can only row the Titanic so long before you just really need to get in the canoe and change directions.
Fantastic. All right, that was about 40 seconds, so good pacing. That or faster moving forward, Darren. Here we go. Next question.
I'm on it.
How can we better create collaborative environments during remote work? i.e., and I'm here for this, and you talked a little bit about this with the talent show, but i.e. avoid divide and conquer and silo mentalities.
You have to get everybody on the same page on a communication front. People need to know where to communicate about work and where to communicate informally. If you have pieces of projects in Slack and Notion and Google Docs and email, you're going to have a nightmare experience trying to bring people together. So at GitLab, we put all of our work in GitLab. It's in one place, single source of truth. Then we do our informal communication on Slack or Zoom. So be really rigid about where communication happens, and things get a lot more seamless.
Fantastic. All right. And speaking of that communication, what tools have you found best help with remote work? And how do you get colleagues who are stuck in their ways to adapt these?
So one new tool that I'm really excited about is called Kona, from a company called Psych Insights, S-I-K-E Insights. Check this out. It's a Slack plugin. It helps build empathy and rapport and understanding amongst teams. It kind of builds a README of who you are and how you like to be thanked, how you like to be communicated with. So when you're interacting with people for the first time, it gives you kind of this bird's eye view on, hey, who is this person? Kind of a Myers-Briggs within Slack. So check it out, Kona.
That's awesome. Okay. So first of all, where are you currently located, Darren?
I'm in North Carolina, where the internet does not work here. I'm just kidding. It kind of works. It's funny. It's like it's fate. It like legitimately for 6 months, it's been rock solid, and then today.
It's Murphy's Law, right? Okay, so the reason I bring this up is your next lightning round question is, what do cities do to be more conducive to remote workers, and what services are key?
Yeah, infrastructure around telecommunications is big. I think you're going to see a lot of small and mid-sized towns invest in, let's get fiber to every home. That's going to be really big. You're going to need to think less about how many skyscrapers can we bring here and more about how many life services can we bring here. And you look at programs that are being run by the state of Vermont, as well as Tulsa Remote. Look at that as the blueprint of what cities need to do to bring people in and say, this is a place we want you to be comfortable living. You just bring the job with you. We're going to design an awesome place to live.
Yes, I actually really like that. I think cities need to create more green spaces and fun places that are
totally
around, that are interspersed in less of a centralized area. Because I think we are going to get to, I mean, you've been one of the folks who really encouraged and inspired me to lead my best life and move out here to the beach where I live and not be in such an urban area. And it's freaking game changer.
Game
Okay,
changing.
something that you're probably quite familiar with. How do you combat some of the technology and Zoom fatigue that we're all getting?
Yeah, here's a tip. On every calendar invite, what I do is I will say, here's a Zoom link, but also here's my phone number. If you hit Zoom fatigue for the day, please feel welcome to just call me. And it proactively gives people permission to call you if they've hit their 5th Zoom for the day and they're like, I cannot look at a webcam anymore. So it's a small thing, but it shows empathy and proactive care.
Yeah, just don't require camera on. Also, just camera off. I turn my camera off all the time. It's okay to turn your camera off. Sometimes I don't want to be talked. Sometimes I want to make a cup of coffee. Doesn't mean you're not
That's
paying.
right.
I think Sid really leads by example with this. It's okay to be a little distracted. It's okay if you don't have to
totally.
be perfect. You're not on live cam. It's freaking ridiculous.
Be a manager of your own time in a Zoom call. If the hour-long call isn't all about you, it's totally okay to look away. It's totally okay to go say hello to a family member or a pet that's in the house. Like, you're managing your own time. You don't have to stare into the camera for an hour if the attention isn't required.
There's nothing that staring into this webcam actually does that the rest.
Yeah, that's a good way to burn out. Just look at the webcam for 8 straight hours, even though it's not required. But no, I mean, I kind of say that tongue in cheek, but for people that aren't aware, it's okay. It's okay. You don't actually have to do that. And for other people in the company, make sure you tell them too. We want to pass this on.
Oh yeah. Speaking of, since we're talking about it, and I know you have an answer for this, so you can answer this one the fastest of all the questions. How did Zoom win when there were more established teleconferencing apps?
Zoom scales. So we have over 1,200 people at GitLab, and we pretty frequently will have all hands calls where we need a video tool that can handle 1,200 people, and Zoom can do it. Pretty easy.
Yes, it's awesome. Moving remote work shifts operating costs, real estate, utilities, etc., from business to employees. How does one quantify this to compensate employees? Maybe you can talk a little bit about how GitLab calculates their salaries here.
Yeah, this one is going to look different for every company, but you got to understand that some of it is shifted back to you, but some of it is sunk costs. Like, your HVAC is probably going to run. You might spend a little bit more on it, a little bit more on energy, but you also have to think about what you're saving in commute. That's time, as well as maybe you don't even need a vehicle now, and then the gas and the insurance and all of that. It's a balance. And frankly, if that doesn't matter at all to you, if you love your commute or your commute doesn't bother you, just keep going to a co-located role. There's nothing I could say to make you go remote if it doesn't matter to you. But for people that value autonomy and flexibility as much or more than salary, this question doesn't even matter. The flexibility is so far and above outweighs any negative that it just matters. But it's a very personal decision. So no qualms with it either way.
Totally feel you that. This is something that I wanted to ask you, and thank you, John, for asking this question in the audience. Interested in your perspective on the potential downsides of remote work, how you've addressed it. Is there inherent value to working in proximity? My follow-up is, my kind of more dramatic version of this is, what will never be replaced when we leave the office forever?
Office politics, which I'm happy to leave behind. It's what are the downsides of remote? There's some downsides. It might be isolating at first, but remember, work from home and remote are different. So you can get unisolated as a remote worker. We have people at GitLab that go to a co-working space every day when we're not in the middle of a global pandemic. So you can go find community. It just might not be with the people right beside you. The big thing here is take advantage of remote. Yeah, if you're paying an exorbitant amount of money for a 1-bedroom apartment in Los Angeles to work remote from, that's probably not maximizing remote. What you should do is move further away from the headquarters, get to a place that enables you to live a much better lifestyle, unlock your imagination, be near something you want to be near. That's when remote starts to really hit home from people. Don't be in a place you don't want to be just to work from your home. You got to uproot and move somewhere else. But it takes a little bit of thinking to, I would say, get out a sheet of paper and start writing down what you want in life or where you want to be in life. And that's where the magic starts to happen.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. So how do you integrate new hires in this environment? I know you've got some documentation, so tell folks where to go if you want to be super lightning about it.
Yes, Google GitLab Onboarding Buddy and GitLab's All Remote Onboarding Guide. Lots of words there. It's all covered.
Oh, Ooh, this is kind of a fun random one. Hi, Amanda. Thank you for your question. I'm kind of sifting through here at the end. What's your advice for college students right now who are thinking about getting a remote job? Maybe they're finishing their classes. That whole demographic. What's your student advice?
If you want to get a remote job, one of the best ways to do it is to take a co-located role, prove yourself in the role, and then propose to your manager that one of the perks you want is some work from home flexibility or some remote flexibility. It's really difficult to just get a remote job. It's a lot easier to get a co-located one and then work your way into remote. So don't be afraid of going that route. Secondarily, don't be afraid of taking a freelance gig. Freelance gigs are much more amenable to remote. My remote career started as a freelance contributor to a tiny website called Engadget. It eventually became one of the world's largest, and I was the managing editor there. So big things have small beginnings, and that includes remote.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. And I think that's really crucial. All right. So we are down to our final two questions, just to let the audience know. While you are still with us, I do want you to know that if you scroll through the Slido right now, you can find out all the contact information for myself, for Darren. We would both love to keep in touch, continue the conversation. Please let us know what you thought about this. If you've learned anything actionable, my goal with every presentation is always to make you laugh, to make you feel, and to make you learn. So hopefully we've managed to do that together today, and do reach out to both Darren and I. You just scroll down to those questions. We're down there at the bottom. And so two last questions here, Darren, for the lightning round. How do you integrate new hires into the company remote?
Onboarding guide. Google GitLab all remote hiring, and you'll see it there. We hire people that love to read. I'll be honest, if you don't love to read and you don't like to document, it's going to be a little bit tougher. But we have people that opt into the culture here, so it makes it easier for us.
I really like that. I think that's a great answer. And then last question from Dr. Tracy Elizabeth Teasley. Thank you, Doctor. What advice do you have for entrepreneurs who want to create a business that has the best of both worlds, face-to-face and virtual? Now, I don't know that this has to be a hybrid model necessarily.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
You should form an all-remote company and then be very intentional about your in-person interactions. So at GitLab, we get the entire company together for a week-long excursion every single year. There's an opening keynote, a closing keynote, and everything in between is just excursions where people get to be together and bond together. We make sure that when we have user events, we bring as many people as we can that are geographically located nearby. We're very intentional about getting people together. Also, there's an amazing company called the Co-work Experience. They design excursions for small and mid-sized teams to pick a different city, go do some team building, some team bonding, have a lot of fun. So be all remote at your core and then plan the travel into it. People really look forward to that.
Oh, I think that is absolutely fantastic, Darren. Wow, your insights are always such a treat. I'm going to give you an opportunity. Would you like to have any closing remark, any nugget you want to leave the audience with? According to my tally, we are 70 days into isolation, permanent work from home forever life. What's your nugget for us? What's your silver bullet?
Unlock your imagination. You're not contained where you are after COVID. Once travel restrictions are lifted, think about where you want to live, what you want your life to look like, and then integrate work into your life, not the other way around. This is a great moment in time, a great privilege to do something like that. And so you don't have to stay where you are. It's all on you to unlock the imagination. The world is your oyster if you can work from anywhere. So take advantage of it. Life is really short and the world is really big. So get out there and explore it.
I think that's why you and I both ended up remote in the first place, was that desire to explore.
That is correct. That is correct.
Well, thank you, Darren. It is always such a pleasure to share time with you. And for those of you in the audience, if you've enjoyed this chat, the South by Southwest team has been generous enough to invite us back for a South by Southwest Connect. If you're interested in a more intimate roundtable discussion, that's going to be happening next week, I believe. And that is the top question right now in the Slido. Do hit up that URL and say, hi, Darren, and I would love to see your faces this time around. It is very interesting presenting to an empty room. So we look forward to hopefully seeing you at our roundtable discussion. Quick wrap up on me. Again, my name is Savannah Peterson. I'm at Savvy, and I'm really delighted. This is the formal announcement of our new podcast that's about to drop called Niche Show, where we talk to you about niche jobs that you never knew about. So all of those cool hobbies and passions that you have, perhaps they could be making you money. And we're trying to tell the feel-good business stories during this chaos. So please do check out, there's a link to sign up for the announcement in the Slido right now. I would love to have you on the show if you have a sweet job. We are here to showcase all of the super cool stories. Nothing is too weird for us. And quite frankly, we are all stronger together. So I hope that you reach out to somebody that you love today and let them know how lovely they are, or send a random card to someone to brighten their day. You never know what it might mean during this time period. We've had the pleasure of hearing from Darren Murph, GitLab's head of remote. Thank you so much again for having us, and to the entire team at South by Southwest who's been helping behind the scenes. Y'all have been so fabulous. My name is Savannah Peterson. I hope to keep in touch. And I'm going to sign off now and send it back to Casey on the South by Southwest team.
Hi again, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and special thanks to Savannah and Darren for sharing your insights on the future of remote work. If you would like the opportunity to discuss today's topic further with Savannah and Darren, just like Savannah mentioned, please fill out the form linked in Slido. Also note, our next South by Southwest virtual session will take place next Tuesday, June 2nd, with celebrity chef, author, entrepreneur, Rachel Ray, and food writer, Addie Broyles. In the meantime, keep up with us on social media at SXSW, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and listen to our South by Southwest Sessions podcast, available on all major platforms. Thank you again for watching, and we hope you join us soon.